On this quiet night, where noise fades from the corners and minds begin searching for something warm to accompany them before sleep, we invite you on a different journey. A long and deep journey through time to a silent, mysterious, and amazing civilization, the Indus Valley Civilization. This journey will take us to a peaceful contemplation of a civilization that was once prosperous and alive, then disappeared, leaving behind mysteries and secrets that puzzle minds to this day. Before we begin, take a moment to press the like and subscribe buttons, but only if you truly enjoy what I present. Nothing makes me happier than knowing this content gently accompanies you before sleep. Share with me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your place. It's always wonderful to see who joins us from all around the world. Relax now. Close your eyes if you wish, or let your gaze wander in the soft darkness around you. Breathe deeply and let the sounds of the day slowly fade away. And now, let's turn off the lights and open wide the doors of history.
Chapter 1. Birth of a Civilization from the Mists of Time. In the depths of the Indian subcontinent, near the great Indus River, a strange and amazing civilization appeared, the Indus Valley Civilization, which flourished more than 5,000 years ago, built great cities, then suddenly disappeared without clear reasons. This civilization still puzzles scientists and leaves behind deep and mysterious questions that no one has answered until today. But what did their cities look like, and what is the secret of their amazing design? Let's go back in time, to a time when most peoples of the earth were still living in small, scattered villages, struggling to survive. In that distant time, in the Indian subcontinent region, something exceptional was happening. The Indus River flowed peacefully through the fertile plains, carrying life and fertility with it. On its banks, small settlements began to appear at first. Then these settlements grew slowly and developed noticeably, until they became real cities in every sense of the word. These were not just random gatherings of humans, but carefully planned cities, reflecting a deep understanding of engineering and urban planning. There was a clear vision, a solid plan, and a strong will to build something that would last. But who were these people? Where did they come from? And how did they manage to achieve this level of development so early in human history? These are questions we don't have complete answers to even today. What we know is that they were a genius people, a people who possessed advanced knowledge in many fields: engineering, agriculture, trade, industry, and perhaps even in philosophy and spirituality. And over centuries, this civilization flourished silently. Far from the eyes of written history, it didn't leave us long texts to read, and didn't build huge pyramids to announce its greatness to the world. Rather, it lived its life quietly, built its cities with precision, and developed its own system of living and organization. Then, one day came, and it disappeared. It disappeared without leaving a clear farewell, without explaining to us why, without telling its complete story. It left only silent ruins, mysterious seals, and puzzles that confuse minds. But before we talk about the disappearance, let's live together those days when this civilization was at its peak of prosperity. Let's walk in its streets, contemplate its houses, and understand how people lived there.
Chapter 2. The Amazing Cities, Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. 4,500 years ago, there were amazing cities in the Indus Valley region, the most important being Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. These two cities were not just ordinary residential communities, but a true model of a civilization that surpassed many ancient civilizations in organization and development. Mohenjo-Daro, City of the Dead. The name Mohenjo-Daro means Mound of the Dead in the Sindhi language, a name given by local residents to the ruins before scientists discovered their truth. But this sad name doesn't at all reflect the vibrant life that once filled this city. When Indian archaeologist Rakaldas Bandyopadhyay discovered this site in 1922, he didn't imagine he was standing on the ruins of one of the oldest planned cities in the world. When excavation and exploration operations began, straight streets, organized buildings, and an integrated system for urban life began to appear. The city was divided into two main sections, the Upper Citadel and the Lower City. The Upper Citadel was elevated above the ground and contained important public buildings, while the Lower City contained residential neighborhoods, markets, and workshops. The streets were wide enough for carts to pass and were perpendicular to each other at nearly right angles, creating a grid system easy to navigate. This type of urban planning wasn't common at that time, and indicates the presence of a central planning authority that supervised the city's construction. Harappa, the sister city. As for Harappa, located hundreds of kilometers from Mohenjo-Daro, it was very similar in design and organization. This similarity is not a coincidence, but indicates that there were unified standards followed by all the cities of this civilization. In Harappa, too, scientists found the same grid system of streets, the same style of construction with fired brick, and the same attention to the sewage system. Fired brick, advanced technology. When scientists first discovered these two cities, they were amazed by what they saw. Neatly arranged houses built precisely from fired brick. Fired brick means that the inhabitants of that civilization discovered advanced building methods. They had special kilns where bricks were fired at very high temperatures, making them strong and solid, able to withstand climate conditions and weather fluctuations for very long periods. In fact, some of this brick is still intact today, after more than 4,000 years have passed. What's even more amazing is that the brick was uniformly sized throughout the city, and even in other distant cities. There were fixed ratios. Length, width, and height were always in specific ratios like 4:2:1. This standardization of measurements indicates the existence of an agreed-upon standard system throughout the civilization. The sewage system, unmatched genius. But what was most amazing about those cities was the sewage system they invented. Yes, thousands of years ago, these two cities possessed a sewage system far better than the systems that existed even in Europe during the Middle Ages. Imagine with me. In every street, there was a covered channel running underground or beside the street. These channels were carefully built from fired brick and designed with precise slopes that allowed water to flow smoothly. Almost every house was connected to this system. Wastewater from bathrooms and kitchens was drained through clay pipes or small channels from the house to the main channel in the street. And at certain points along these channels, there were inspection openings that could be accessed to clean the channels if they became blocked. Even the drains were equipped with filters to prevent large objects from entering and obstructing the system.
This level of thinking and planning for public health and cleanliness didn't exist in most civilizations of that time. In fact, some European cities in the 19th century didn't have a sewage system of this quality. Houses in Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were built around inner courtyards, providing privacy for the families living in them. Most houses were single-story, but some were 2 stories. The outer doors of houses opened onto narrow side streets, not main streets, which increased privacy and reduced noise. And when you entered the house, you found yourself in a courtyard open to the sky, surrounded by rooms on all sides. This inner courtyard was the heart of the house, where most daily activities took place. In the morning, perhaps women ground grain there or prepared food. And in the evening, perhaps the family gathered there under the stars. And these houses were equipped with private bathrooms, something that wasn't widespread in most world civilizations at that time. The bathrooms were tiled with brick and equipped with a drainage system that connected the used water to the main sewage system in the street. In fact, some houses contained what resembled toilets directly connected to the sewage system. These toilets were brick seats with an opening leading to a covered channel that transported waste away from the house.
Public places, centers of community life. The cities weren't limited to just residential buildings, but also contained very large public spaces. There were large markets where merchants displayed their goods and people wandered buying and selling. And there were huge warehouses for storing grain and crops. These warehouses were built cleverly, with floors slightly raised above the ground to protect grain from moisture and rodents. And there were ventilation openings to ensure the grain stayed dry and usable. Everything was organized in a way that indicates this civilization possessed a very advanced administrative system. It's clear they knew well how to manage an integrated life in a large society. The Great Bath, religious mystery or public bath. One of the most interesting buildings in Mohenjo-Daro is what's known as the Great Bath. This bath is a large rectangular pool, about 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, and about 2.4 meters deep. The bath was built with extreme precision from fired brick and sealed with a layer of bitumen to prevent water leakage. And there were steps on all sides allowing people to descend into the water. The function of this bath is still debated among scientists. Some believe it was used in religious rituals, perhaps purification, or religious bathing rituals. Others see it was just a large public bath. But the great precision in its construction and the distinctive location it occupies in the city suggest it was more than just an ordinary bath. And the puzzling thing, which scientists are still searching for an explanation for, is not finding any palaces or large temples like those found in ancient Egypt or Mesopotamian civilizations. In most ancient civilizations, huge temples and royal palaces were the most prominent and largest buildings. But in the Indus Valley, we find nothing of this sort. This strange absence raised many questions about the method of governance in this civilization. Was there a strong central government managing everything? Or were people living a more equal and participatory life without needing a strong ruler or huge buildings expressing power? Some scientists believe that the absence of huge palaces and temples might mean this civilization was more democratic than others, or perhaps it was ruled by a council of merchants or priests instead of one powerful king. A message to the future. These cities were built with amazing precision and ideal organization, to the degree that those who visit them today can't believe they were built thousands of years ago.
as if those who built these cities weren't only aiming to survive, but also wanted to send a message to the future, saying, "Humans are capable of achieving great accomplishments even in very early times of history." The most important question that comes to our minds as we contemplate these ancient cities is, what is the secret that made the Indus Valley inhabitants succeed in achieving such early urban organization, and what is the reason behind the precise design of these cities? To answer these questions, we must learn more about the daily life of people in this mysterious civilization.
Chapter 3: Daily Life, the Rhythm of Days in the Indus Valley. When we go back thousands of years to the distant past, specifically to the time of the Indus Valley Civilization, we find that the people who lived in these ancient cities enjoyed a prosperous and happy life. Let's imagine an ordinary day in the life of a family living in Mohenjo-Daro. Let's walk with them from dawn until dusk and see what life looked like in those distant days. Dawn, beginning of a new day. The day begins with the first threads of dawn, when the soft sunlight begins to creep into the inner courtyards of houses. The cold air of early morning carries with it the scent of the nearby Indus River, mixed with the smell of damp earth. Women wake first and begin preparing breakfast for the family. Perhaps they grind grain on the millstone, that circular stone of which many have been found in excavations. The rhythmic sound of grinding grain fills the quiet morning. Children wake slowly, and life begins to stir in the house. Perhaps the father goes to his workshop if he's a craftsman, or to the fields if he's a farmer, or to the market if he's a merchant. Agriculture, the foundation of life. The secret behind this comfortable life was their success in agriculture, trade, and industry. Thanks to their intelligence and knowledge, they were able to build a strong and stable society. The inhabitants of this civilization lived primarily on agriculture. Vast fields stretched around their cities, where they grew grains like wheat and barley, in addition to other plants like cotton, vegetables, and various fruits. Cotton, specifically, was an extremely important crop, as they used it to make clothes. In fact, some historians believe the Indus Valley Civilization was among the first civilizations to grow cotton and use it extensively. Farmers would wake with dawn to avoid the scorching daytime heat. They would walk to their fields carrying their simple tools, wooden plows, bronze sickles, and digging tools. Some used oxen to pull the plow and till the land. Cotton, white gold. Cotton was specifically an extremely important crop, as they used it to make clothes. In fact, some historians believe the Indus Valley Civilization was among the first civilizations to grow cotton and use it extensively. Imagine vast cotton fields where plants sway gently with the morning breeze and soft white flowers bloom under the sun's rays. Cotton was picked carefully, then cleaned of seeds, then spun into threads, and finally woven into soft and comfortable fabrics. Irrigation system, water engineering. And to succeed in agriculture, they built a precise and tight irrigation system that helped them deliver water from the Indus River to distant fields. This wasn't easy. They had to dig long channels, build small dams to divert water, and create reservoirs to store water in times of drought. All this required precise planning and organized collective work. Thanks to these smart techniques, agriculture became easy and fruitful to a large degree, making grain and crops abundantly available, which gave people a sense of food security and helped stabilize their cities for long centuries. Midday, the pulse of the markets. With the sun rising high in the sky, markets begin to pulse with life. Merchants open their stalls,
Their varied displays fill the squares. Colored pottery, precisely woven fabrics, shining jewelry, grain and lagoons, fresh fruits and vegetables. People wander between stalls, examining goods, bargaining over prices. Perhaps they used a barter system, or perhaps they had a primitive form of currency. We don't know for certain. Trade, windows to the world. But people's lives weren't limited only to agriculture, as trade flourished clearly as well. The civilization was connected with the outside world thanks to merchants who carried goods and traveled to very distant places. Let's imagine a trade caravan preparing to set off on a long journey to Mesopotamia. Camels and oxen loaded with precious goods, bags of woven cotton, boxes of decorated pottery wrapped in straw to protect them from breaking, small boxes containing precious jewelry. The journey might take weeks. Sailors face storms and high waves, but they know the way well. Their fathers and grandfathers traveled it before them. Precious export goods. The most important of these goods was cotton, for which the Indus civilization was famous, as their cotton fabrics were of high quality and in high demand in other civilizations. Cotton woven from the Indus was soft, comfortable, and durable. In other civilizations, where clothes were made from coarse wool or linen, soft cotton fabric from the Indus Valley was considered a luxury. They also exported decorated pottery and glassware and ornaments made from precious metals like gold and silver and precious stones like carnelian. The Indus Valley Civilization was known to draw on both their craftsmanship and tendency towards decoration and beauty.
Import goods. On the other hand, other civilizations sent to the Indus Valley materials that weren't available there. Among these materials was copper, which was absolutely necessary for making tools and weapons. Copper came from distant regions, perhaps from the mountains of Oman or from Afghanistan. It was a precious metal, necessary for making agricultural tools, construction tools, and weapons. They also imported special precious stones that didn't exist in their region, in addition to some other metals like tin, which was used to make bronze. Bronze, a mixture of copper and tin, was stronger and more durable than copper alone, and was used to make higher quality tools. Cultural exchange. This extensive trade between the Indus Valley and Mesopotamia wasn't just an exchange of materials, but also a cultural and intellectual exchange. Ideas and cultures were transferred between civilizations through merchants, which helped in the prosperity and development of these societies significantly. The merchant who spends weeks in a distant city doesn't return only with goods, but also returns with stories and ideas. He tells of cities he saw, customs and traditions he learned, new techniques he witnessed. Organized trade management. But one of the things that caught scientists' attention most is the way they managed their trade. It appears from the evidence that they managed trade in a very organized manner, and perhaps they used a precise system to record goods and calculate commercial transactions. The seals themselves were part of this system. Each merchant or workshop had its own seal. When goods were sent, they were sealed with the personal seal, as a kind of signature or certificate of authenticity. Evening, times of rest and joy. But away from work, agriculture, and trade, how were their free times? How did they spend evening hours or days of rest? Scientists have revealed things that show that Indus Valley inhabitants loved various games. Game pieces resembling chess and dice were found, which indicates that they spent their time in entertainment and mental challenge. Scientists also found statues and small carvings of people playing musical instruments, which means they loved music and practiced it greatly in their lives. They also had various festivals and celebrations, which were likely related to agricultural seasons or their special holidays. These celebrations were held in the large squares in their cities and brought people together in cheerful atmospheres. Cleanliness and advanced culture.
They also cared greatly for their personal cleanliness. Private and public bathrooms were widespread everywhere, and water was permanently available for cleanliness and bathing, reflecting their advanced culture and concern for cleanliness and health. Despite all these details, the life of the inhabitants of this mysterious civilization still holds many secrets and questions. How did they organize their daily lives in this amazing way? And how did they succeed in balancing between work and leisure, and between agriculture, industry, and trade? But there's a bigger mystery they left us, a mystery that has puzzled scientists for decades and still has no solution today: their mysterious language, whose symbols haven't been deciphered. This is what we'll discover in the next chapter.
Chapter 4: The Silent Language. Symbols that refuse to speak. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding the Indus Valley Civilization is the mysterious language they left behind. This language that remains silent and hasn't been read to this day. Imagine you find an old book, its pages full of strange symbols you've never seen before. You try to read them, but nothing seems familiar. You can't understand a single word. This is exactly what scientists face with the Indus Valley language. The seals, locked keys. Thousands of small stone seals have been found bearing strange symbols and inscriptions, but no scientist has been able to decode these mysterious symbols. Those seals found in the cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were made from soapstone or fired clay. Soapstone is a soft stone, easy to carve, but it becomes hard after firing. On the face of each seal were strange inscriptions that looked like letters or special symbols, and under these inscriptions were drawn pictures of animals like elephants and rhinoceros, or even mythical creatures no one had seen before. These seals were small in size, usually about 2-3 square centimeters. Each had a small hole in the back, perhaps for hanging it on a necklace or cord. This suggests their owners carried them with them always. But the big question that puzzled scientists is, do these symbols represent letters like the languages we know, or are they just symbols with different meanings like those found in other ancient civilizations? Some scientists believe this is real writing, a complete linguistic system with its rules and structure. They base this on several observations. First, the symbols appear in a certain order, not randomly. Some symbols always appear at the beginning of inscriptions and others at the end. This resembles grammatical rules in languages. Second, there are about 400 to 600 different symbols discovered. This number falls in the middle zone between alphabets, which usually contain 20 to 40 letters, and pictographic writing, which may contain thousands of symbols. This suggests it might have been a syllabic writing system, where each symbol represents a syllable. But other scientists doubt this. They say the inscriptions are too short. Most don't exceed 4 to 5 symbols. How can this be a complete language? Perhaps they were just logos or trademarks or religious symbols. Uses of the seals. Despite the great efforts made by researchers, mystery still surrounds everything related to this language. Some scientists believe this language was used in trade because seals were often used to sign goods and document commercial transactions. Imagine a merchant preparing his goods for export. He places the seal on a bag of cotton or a piece of clay attached to a pottery vessel.
This seal says, "This belongs to so-and-so," or "This is from such and such workshop," or "This is certified by the authorities." In fact, similar seals were found in very distant places, like Mesopotamia, confirming the existence of trade relations between these ancient civilizations. Possible religious meanings. While other researchers see that these symbols weren't only for trade, but carried religious or spiritual meanings. Perhaps they were used in religious rituals or to protect things from evil forces. This belief comes from symbols showing strong animals like bulls, which were considered symbols of strength and protection in many ancient civilizations. Perhaps the seal was a kind of amulet or charm. Its owner carried it to protect him from evil or hung it in his house to bring blessings. But the one very strange thing is that these symbols repeated greatly in all the Indus Valley Civilization cities, to the point that some symbols appeared hundreds of times without us understanding the reason behind this. This repetition raised a new idea, which is that these symbols might have been names of important people, or cities, or certain areas. Perhaps they were titles or family names.
Modern decoding attempts. Scientists tried using modern technology to decode these symbols. They used computers and artificial intelligence to analyze them and try to understand their patterns. All known symbols were entered into huge databases. Computer programs searched for patterns. Which symbols appear together repeatedly? Which symbols come at the beginning and which at the end? Are there rules that can be discovered? And although they discovered some simple patterns that repeat constantly, they couldn't understand the meanings these patterns carry. The basic problem is that we don't have a Rosetta Stone for the Indus Valley. The Rosetta Stone is that famous stone that helped decode Egyptian hieroglyphics because it carried the same text in 3 different languages. If we found a seal or tablet carrying text in the Indus Valley language with a translation in another language we know, like ancient Sumerian, we could decode it. But so far, no such key has been found. Complete disappearance. And despite all these efforts, the Indus Valley language remains one of the most mysterious ancient languages in human history. This mystery adds a special charm to this civilization and makes us always wonder what this ancient civilization wanted to say and what it missed telling us. What's also amazing is that this mysterious language disappeared completely with the collapse of this civilization itself. After the sudden disappearance of this civilization, this language didn't appear again anywhere, leaving behind only those silent seals. An obstacle to complete understanding. Our inability to read the Indus Valley language constitutes a major obstacle to our complete understanding of this civilization. Imagine if we could read this language, how many wonderful things we might discover. Perhaps we would know the names of their kings or rulers, or how they managed their daily lives in more detail. Perhaps we would read their stories and myths, learn about their gods by name, understand their philosophy of life. And perhaps most importantly, perhaps we could understand the reasons for the collapse of this great civilization. Perhaps they left us warning messages or a description of what happened to them. But these messages, if they exist, are still locked to us. Hope remains. But until that day comes when we understand these symbols, the Indus Valley language will remain a beautiful mystery that stimulates our imagination and pushes us to continue searching and questioning. And awaiting that day, we'll continue our journey, discovering more secrets of this mysterious civilization. Now heading to a field no less mysterious than this language, the creed and worship practiced by the Indus Valley inhabitants.
Chapter 5. Hidden Faith. Gods Without Temples.
When we contemplate the life of the Indus Valley Civilization inhabitants, the question that arouses our curiosity is, what were their creed and worship like? Did they have their own gods? And how did they practice these rituals? The puzzling absence of temples. Unlike other ancient civilizations, like ancient Egyptian civilization or Mesopotamia, no huge and clear temples were discovered in Indus Valley cities, and this matter greatly raised the astonishment and confusion of scientists. Temples are usually considered strong evidence of the nature of worship. In Egypt, temples were huge and decorated with drawings telling stories of gods and kings. In Mesopotamia, towering ziggurats overlooked the cities, announcing the power and greatness of the gods. But in the Indus Valley, the place of these temples remains a great mystery. Were they present, but we haven't recognized them yet? Or were their worship of a different type, not needing huge buildings? Small evidence of great faith. But despite this, archaeologists were able to find small evidence indicating the existence of some kind of creed or faith among the inhabitants of this civilization. Among the most prominent of this evidence are small statues found in houses in city squares. These statues were usually in the form of humans or animals, and perhaps represented gods or certain religious symbols. Some of these statues depict women with full bodies, perhaps representing the goddess of fertility and motherhood. This type of statue is common in many ancient civilizations, where people worshiped the female as a source of life and fertility. The priest king, a mysterious figure. One of the most famous statues found in this civilization is a small statue of a man sitting in a position resembling a meditation position. This small stone statue, which doesn't exceed 18 centimeters in height, depicts a man with a trimmed beard and hair tied back. He wears a cloak decorated with engravings in the form of trefoil plant leaves. His eyes are half closed, as if in deep meditation. Scientists believe this figure might have been a symbol of a sacred person or priest leading religious rituals. Or perhaps he was a king combining worldly and spiritual authority. Sacred animals. Some seals showed animals like bulls and elephants, which are animals that might have special religious symbolism. Bulls, for example, are considered a symbol of strength and fertility in many ancient civilizations, and perhaps represented a god or sacred power among the Indus Valley inhabitants. There's a very famous seal depicting a huge bull with curved horns, in front of which is something resembling an incense burner, or vessel in which something burns. Was this part of a religious ritual? Were they burning incense or offerings before the symbol of the sacred bull? The mysterious unicorn. Among the important symbols also found frequently on seals is the symbol of the unicorn, which is a rare and mysterious animal that might be a symbol of strength or protection. But the strange thing is that the drawn animal doesn't look exactly like a real rhinoceros. It has a body resembling a bull, but with one large horn in the middle of the forehead. Was this a mythical animal, or a symbol of a certain god? The presence of this animal on seals very repeatedly indicates that the sea inhabitants of this civilization gave great value to this symbol in their beliefs.
Water sanctification. As for water, there is strong evidence that the Indus Valley inhabitants greatly sanctified water. The Indus River was the main lifeline for them, and therefore it's believed they worshipped a special god of water or the river,
just as happened in other ancient civilizations like the Egyptian civilization that sanctified the Nile River. Water was more than just a source for drinking and irrigation. It was a symbol of life itself, of renewal, of purity. Therefore, it's natural that it occupied a sacred place in their beliefs. The Great Bath, a place for rituals. Also found were many large pools in the cities, such as the Great Bath in Mohenjo-Daro, which is believed to have been used for religious and ritual purposes. This bath was made with extreme precision from fired brick and built with great accuracy, suggesting the importance of water in their spiritual life. Perhaps people came to this bath for ritual bathing, to purify themselves before prayer, or participating in a religious celebration. Perhaps there were special rituals performed on the edge of the bath, where people gathered to watch priests performing certain rites. Mother Goddess. Also found were some small statues showing women in certain forms, and perhaps these statues represented the goddess of fertility, which was worshipped in many ancient civilizations. These statues usually depict women with full bodies, with clear emphasis on the chest, belly, and buttocks, all symbols of fertility and the ability to reproduce. The presence of these statues indicates that the Indus Valley inhabitants practiced religious rituals related to fertility and reproduction. In an agricultural society, fertility of the land, and fertility of women was vital for survival. But the absence of large or clear temples remains extremely puzzling. Their worship might have taken place in private homes or in public squares, without the need for large buildings. And perhaps they preferred simplicity in their worship, and didn't need complex or massive rituals like other civilizations. There are also theories suggesting they perhaps practiced their religious rituals in natural places, like riverbanks or nearby hills. Perhaps there were sacred trees, or certain water springs, or natural rock formations considered sacred places. People came to them to pray and meditate, without needing to build stone temples. Faith as a unifying force. In the end, our understanding of the creed of the Indus Valley inhabitants remains limited and mysterious, and all the evidence found provides only small parts of a large picture we're still trying to complete. This mysterious creed that united the inhabitants of this civilization might be what gave them the strength to continue and flourish for long periods before their civilization suddenly disappeared. Perhaps shared faith was the glue that bound this vast society. Perhaps religious rituals were the occasions where people from different parts of the city gathered, where they remembered they were part of something bigger than themselves. And now, let's move to learn more about this civilization's relationships with other civilizations, and how it interacted with them in a way that helped it prosper and develop.
Chapter 6. Early Silk Roads, the Global Trade Network. When we talk about the Indus Valley Civilization, we cannot forget to talk about its amazing relationships with other civilizations. This civilization, despite its geographical distance, was connected with distant areas in an impressive way, where clear evidence was discovered indicating that the Indus Valley inhabitants were trading continuously with famous civilizations like Mesopotamia, ancient Iraq, and even Arabian Gulf civilizations. Seals in Ur, conclusive evidence. Among the most prominent evidence proving these relationships are the distinctive stone seals we talked about earlier. These seals bore special symbols and images like bulls and rhinoceroses. And similar seals were found in very distant areas like the city of Ur in southern Mesopotamia. Ur was a great Sumerian city, an important trade center and sacred city. When scientists found these seals in Ur, in archaeological layers dating back to the same period of the Indus Valley's prosperity, they immediately realized that there was a huge trade network that existed between these ancient civilizations. In fact, Sumerian cuneiform texts themselves mentioned a land called Meluha, from which precious goods were exported. Many scientists believe that Meluha was the name the Sumerians gave to the Indus Valley Civilization. But the interesting question here is, how did the Indus Valley inhabitants manage to establish trade relations with these distant areas? The truth is that the Indus Valley, despite being distant, was located in a very important strategic place. It was near the Arabian Sea, which facilitated travel for merchants across the waters using ships, in addition to the land routes that connected them to inland areas. There were important ports, like the port of Lothal, which was discovered in present-day Gujarat state. This port was equipped with a huge dock and an advanced waterlock system that allowed ships to enter and exit even with changing tide levels. In these long sea trade journeys, Indus Valley merchants carried precious and diverse goods with them. Imagine a large wooden ship, skillfully built from teak or saw wood. Sails made from woven fabric are raised high, and sailors watch the stars to determine their direction. In the ship's holds, goods are carefully stacked, bags of woven cotton, boxes of decorated pottery wrapped in straw to protect them from breaking, small boxes containing precious jewelry. The journey might take weeks. Sailors face storms and high waves, but they know the way well. Their fathers and grandfathers traveled it before them. Precious export goods. The most important of these goods was cotton, for which the Indus civilization was famous, as their cotton fabrics were of high quality and in demand in other civilizations. Cotton woven from the Indus Valley was soft, comfortable, and durable. In other civilizations, where clothes were made from coarse wool or linen, soft cotton fabric from the Indus Valley was considered a luxury. They also exported decorated pottery and glassware and ornaments made from precious metals like gold and silver, and precious stones like carnelian. Decorated pottery with its precise geometric shapes and jewelry made with high craftsmanship, all this found its way to distant markets where the wealthy and nobles paid high prices for these luxury goods. Import goods. On the other hand, other civilizations sent to the Indus Valley materials that weren't available there. Among these materials was copper, which was absolutely necessary for making tools and weapons. Copper came from distant regions, perhaps from the Oman Mountains or from Afghanistan. It was a precious metal necessary for making agricultural tools, building tools, and weapons. They also imported special precious stones that didn't exist in their region, in addition to some other metals like tin, which was used to make bronze. Bronze, a mixture of copper and tin, was stronger and more durable than copper, and was used to make higher quality tools. Cultural exchange. This extensive trade between the Indus Valley and Mesopotamia wasn't just an exchange of materials, but also a cultural and intellectual exchange. Ideas and cultures were transferred between civilizations through merchants, which helped in the prosperity and development of these societies significantly. The merchant who spends weeks in a distant city doesn't return only with goods, but returns with stories and ideas. He tells of cities he saw, customs and traditions he learned, new techniques he witnessed. Maybe he saw a new way to make something, or an innovative architectural design, or a new style of decoration. And when he returns to his country, he transmits these ideas, and they begin to spread and influence. Mutual influence. It's also believed that the Indus Valley Civilization might have directly influenced other civilizations through the knowledge it had in fields like agriculture, sewage systems, and even the precise construction methods that amazed those who visited their cities.
Maybe engineers in other countries learned from the advanced sewage system in the Indus Valley. Maybe foreign merchants were impressed by the organization of markets and warehouses and transmitted these ideas to their countries.
Organized trade management. But one of the things that caught scientists' attention most is the way they managed their trade. It appears from the evidence that they managed trade in a very organized manner, and perhaps they used a precise system to record goods and calculate commercial transactions. The seals themselves were part of this system. Each merchant or workshop had its own seal. When goods were sent, they were sealed with the personal seal as a kind of signature or certificate of authenticity. Besides trade relations, there are some theories suggesting the existence of diplomatic or political relations between the Indus Valley and other civilizations. Some scientists believe that rulers in these civilizations might have exchanged messages or embassies, although evidence for this is very limited and still widely debated among historians. Perhaps there were trade agreements or peace treaties or even royal marriages between ruling families in different civilizations, but all this remains in the realm of speculation. What makes these relationships more interesting is that they continued for hundreds of years, indicating that these ties were strong and solid, and not just passing dealings. The Indus Valley inhabitants succeeded in building a good reputation in trade, making their products known and continuously demanded in distant markets. Navigation and trade skills are also amazing to think about how these ancient merchants were able to travel long distances without accurate maps or modern means of transportation. They used the stars and land and sea routes skillfully to reach their destinations, indicating their great experience and high skill in travel and trade. Sailors knew the stars by name, knew how to determine their direction by looking at the sky. They knew the seasons of the monsoon winds, when they blow from the northeast and when from the southwest, and exploited them for sailing. And despite all this evidence, there are still many questions in scientists' minds. What were the details of this trade? How did they plan their long journeys? And how did they face the dangers that might cross their path during these difficult journeys? Pirates, storms, lack of water and food, diseases, all these were real dangers, but they faced them bravely, driven by the desire for profit, adventure, and exploration. These questions are part of the great mystery surrounding the Indus Valley Civilization, which still awaits scientists to discover more evidence to understand it better. But with all this great cultural and commercial interaction comes the most mysterious question about this civilization. Why and how did it suddenly disappear? This is the big question we'll try to explore in detail in the next chapter.
Chapter 7. The Mysterious End, When the Cities Fell Silent. Despite all the prosperity and development that the Indus Valley Civilization lived for hundreds of years, something strange and puzzling happened. Suddenly, and without a clear reason, this civilization began to decline and gradually fade away until it completely disappeared about 3,600 years ago. This sudden disappearance remains one of the biggest mysteries that scientists are trying to solve to this day. The beginning of the end. Over long decades, researchers tried to provide explanations for what happened, and several theories were proposed to try to understand the reasons for this mysterious collapse. Let's imagine the city of Mohenjo-Daro in its final years. The streets that were full of life began to gradually empty. Some houses became empty, their owners left and didn't return. The precise sewage system began to be neglected. Channels began to clog. Trade that was flourishing began to decline. The caravans that used to come and go became fewer in number. Workshops began to close their doors one after another. What happened? Theory 1. Climate catastrophe. One of the most famous theories is the one related to severe climate changes that might have occurred at that time. Some scientists believe that the Indus Valley region faced severe climate changes represented by a large decrease in the amount of rainfall. Modern geological research supports this theory. When studying sediment layers at the bottom of ancient lakes and studying rings of fossilized tree trunks, scientists found evidence of a long period of drought that occurred at that exact time. This matter led to the gradual drying of the Indus River, and the land became dry and unsuitable for agriculture. The fields that were green and fruitful became brown, cracked, unable to produce crops. And with the disappearance of the main water source, it became very difficult for the population to continue agriculture, which was the basis of their life. Imagine the farmers looking at their dry fields, seeing plants die one after another. They try to irrigate, but the river water has become scarce. Wells began to dry up. Animals have nothing to eat, humans have nothing to plant. And this perhaps pushed them to migrate away from the cities they built and loved. A long journey searching for more fertile land, for a river that still flows, for hope in a new life. Theory 2. The river's anger. Another theory presented by scientists is the occurrence of devastating floods due to sudden changes in the course of the river. In fact, some geological research has shown that the course of the Indus River actually changed several times throughout history. Large rivers like the Indus aren't fixed. Over time, silt accumulates, the riverbed rises, and at some point, the river might completely change its course, cutting a new path through the land. If one of these changes occurred suddenly and powerfully, it might have caused massive floods that destroyed cities and forced residents to leave their homes and migrate to safer areas. Imagine water coming suddenly, a huge wave sweeping everything in its path. Brick houses collapse, streets filled with water, people flee carrying what they could carry. And even after the water recedes, the city remains destroyed. Mud covers everything, houses are cracked, the sewage system completely destroyed. Rebuilding all this might be harder than starting over in another place. Theory 3. The Aryan invasion. Some researchers presented another explanation represented by attacks and invasions of tribes from distant areas. There are theories suggesting that tribes from Central Asia, known as Aryans, entered the region and might have waged wars or clashes with the Indus Valley inhabitants. This theory was popular in the past, but has become highly doubted now. These clashes, if they happened, might have caused destruction of cities and weakening this civilization significantly. But despite the existence of these theories, there is still no conclusive evidence confirming only one reason. Theory 4. A perfect storm. Some scientists believe it wasn't one reason behind this collapse, but a combination of factors together, like drought, floods, and invasions. And all these events together might be the reason for the civilization's collapse. This compound explanation might be more logical because it's rare for a strong civilization to collapse in this way due to only one factor. Civilizations are usually resilient and able to adapt to challenges. Drought for a few years can be dealt with by using reserves, trading with other areas. Flood can rebuild. But if several factors coincided at one time, it might be very difficult for the civilization to overcome them.
Imagine drought hits the region, crops fail, famine begins. At the same time, the river changes its course, which destroys the irrigation system and floods some cities. People are weak from hunger, unable to rebuild. And at this exact time, migrating tribes began to press the borders.
Gradual collapse. What's more interesting in this mystery is that the civilization's disappearance didn't happen suddenly in all areas at the same time, but gradually. Some cities were abandoned first, then other cities followed after a period. This indicates that the changes that occurred were perhaps gradual and not a sudden catastrophe at one time. Perhaps problems began in peripheral areas first. People there migrated, retreated to the big cities. But with continuing problems, even the big cities were no longer able to accommodate everyone or provide decent living. Gradually, the big cities themselves began to empty. People left in small groups, searching for a better life elsewhere. And with the disappearance of this civilization, its language and symbols also disappeared, which might have revealed to us the reason for the disappearance of this mysterious civilization. Absence of violence. But what really puzzles scientists is not finding traces of large battles or huge wars. Researchers didn't find clear evidence of severe violence or widespread destruction of cities. There are no layers of ash indicating large fires. There are no many skeletal remains of violence victims. There are no weapons in large numbers. This matter raises the question again about whether invasions actually happened or whether residents left their cities peacefully due to difficult natural conditions. Perhaps the departure was organized. Families pack their belongings, take what they can carry, and leave quietly. No battles, no drama, just sad, silent departure. And the most important question remains: where did the inhabitants of this civilization go after they abandoned their cities? Did they integrate with other nearby civilizations, or did they disperse into small groups and live in other areas? These questions haven't found confirmed answers until now. Some scientists believe they migrated eastward, toward the Ganges River basin, where they found fertile land and abundant water, and began a new life there. Perhaps they integrated with local residents and contributed to forming the later Indian civilization. Others believe they dispersed into small scattered villages, returned to simple agricultural life, lost most of the urban development they had. A lesson from history. The disappearance of the Indus Valley Civilization remains a great mystery despite all attempts at research and new discoveries. This mystery left to us by the Indus Valley inhabitants always reminds us that civilizations, no matter how much they reach in power and progress, can face unexpected challenges that lead to their end. It's a reminder of the fragility of human progress, that what we build with centuries of effort might disappear in decades. A reminder of the importance of balance with nature, that the environment isn't something we control, but a partner we must respect. But despite everything we've discovered, there are still many questions without answers. These questions push scientists to continue searching and digging in the sands of the Indus Valley, hoping to reach a clear explanation for this great mystery. And awaiting what the days will reveal of secrets, we'll now move to explore the efforts that are still continuing to understand this mysterious civilization better.
Chapter 8: The Ongoing Search, When the Past Refuses to be Forgotten. Despite thousands of years passing since the disappearance of the Indus Valley Civilization, the search for it has never stopped. On the contrary, scientific efforts are increasing day by day, as if this ancient civilization refuses to be buried in oblivion. For whenever something new is discovered, questions increase instead of decrease,
as if this distant past resists revelation and insists on remaining an open mystery before generations. In the field, continuous excavation. Today, in archaeological laboratories and in the Indian and Pakistani deserts, there are those who still dig, excavate, and scrutinize every stone and every layer of soil, searching for new evidence or a small inscription or building remains that might open a door to understanding what actually happened. The archaeologist wakes with dawn, takes his tools, the soft brush, small shovel, sieve, notebook, and goes to the excavation site. Every day, a new layer of soil is carefully removed. Every small piece found is carefully examined, photographed, its exact location recorded before lifting it. For some of these discoveries may not seem important at first, but they illuminate a fine thread in the fabric of this mysterious civilization. A single preserved grain of charred wheat can tell us about the types of crops they grew. A small piece of charcoal can give us a precise date through radiocarbon analysis. A single carnelian bead can reveal trade routes we didn't know about. Artificial intelligence, new hope. One of the topics researchers focus on most today is language. Some scientists have begun using artificial intelligence to try to analyze the symbols engraved on the seals. Modern programs try to recognize recurring patterns and compare them with other ancient languages, hoping to decode this code that has defied humans for centuries. The computer can analyze thousands of seals in seconds, searching for patterns that might escape the human eye. It compares the arrangement of symbols, their frequency, their position on different seals. And although the results so far are still limited, hope still exists. Perhaps the solution is near, and perhaps we need to discover longer seals or clearer inscriptions until we reach the first word that opens everything. Aerial photography, eyes in the sky. On the other hand, modern geographic maps and aerial photography techniques have become an essential tool in the search. Some ancient cities are completely buried under soil and cannot be seen with the naked eye. But photographs via satellites and ground-penetrating radar devices reveal lines and squares that were once streets, buildings, or public squares. The LiDAR technology uses lasers to create very precise three-dimensional maps of terrain. It can penetrate vegetation cover and reveal hidden structures underground. And in recent years, several new sites have been discovered through these techniques, sites no one knew existed before. And every year, new reports are published about small discoveries, a broken statue, an old well, or a vessel with unique decoration. These simple details become pieces of a huge puzzle. Archaeologists treat everything as if it's treasure, even if it seems ordinary, because every detail carries a message from the past, and perhaps evidence of a missing part of the human story. In 2019, a new site was discovered in Haryana state, India. Initial excavations revealed a bead-making workshop with hundreds of semi-manufactured stone pieces. This small discovery gave us new information about how craft production was organized in this civilization. Field challenges. What makes the search task more difficult is that archaeological sites are now located in inhabited areas, conflict zones, or places difficult to access for political or natural reasons. Therefore, some parts of the Indus Valley Civilization are still buried under modern villages or in lands difficult to excavate. This means there are large parts of the story that haven't been discovered yet, and perhaps never will. Some important sites are now under modern buildings. An entire city cannot be demolished for archaeological research. This means some secrets may remain hidden forever. International teams and cooperation. Nevertheless, researchers don't give up. Every archaeological team working today carries a map of hopes, advanced devices, and old references from the books of the first explorers, trying to read them anew. Some focus on abandoned sites,
Some study ancient water sources, and others trace old trade routes that pass through mountains and rivers. And there's great international cooperation. Teams from India, Pakistan, Britain, America, France, and Japan, all working together, sharing information and discoveries.
Growing global interest. What's striking in all this is that global interest in this civilization is increasing, not decreasing. There are universities in Europe, research centers in America, and institutes in India and Pakistan all allocating budgets and special projects to study the Indus Valley Civilization. Some university students choose this civilization as a topic for their dissertations and spend years analyzing its details. PhD theses, international conferences, new books, all contribute to increasing our knowledge about this civilization. But why all this interest? Why not leave the Indus Valley Civilization in its silence and forget it like others? Perhaps because there's something different about it. Because it didn't leave us written history to read, but left us deep silence. And this silence is what moves human curiosity and makes him continue searching. Because we want to understand who these people were, how they lived, and why they disappeared. We want to hear their voices across thousands of years, to understand their dreams and fears, to learn from their successes and failures. And perhaps also because in this civilization there's a deep message about the fragility of progress. How can a society build great cities and master agriculture, trade, and industry, then disappear without leaving a clear explanation behind? This reminder that civilizations, no matter how refined they become, can suddenly end, makes us hold on to knowing the details, as if we're trying to learn something that can protect us from the same fate. In our world today, where we face major environmental challenges, where climate change threatens many areas, the story of the Indus Valley seems more important than ever. It's a cautionary tale about what can happen when the environment changes drastically. And with the continuation of research, faith increases that there's a major discovery on the way. Something that will be discovered one day that changes everything we know about this civilization. And perhaps when that happens, new doors will open not only to the Indus Valley, but to a broader understanding of human history. Perhaps we'll find a complete library of written tablets. Perhaps we'll discover a large temple that was hidden. Perhaps technology will develop to a degree that allows us to finally read the language. But until then, the search journey continues, and digging in the sands of time doesn't stop. And in the shadow of this mystery, we now approach the end of our journey to try to contemplate what we can learn from a forgotten civilization whose impact remains present despite all this silence.
Chapter 9. Lessons and Morals: What Silent Civilizations Teach Us. As we approach the end of our long journey through the ruins of the Indus Valley Civilization, let's pause a little and contemplate, what did we learn from this mysterious civilization? What are the lessons we can draw from the story of a people who lived, prospered, then disappeared? Lesson 1. Organization and Planning. The first clear lesson is the importance of organization and planning. Indus Valley cities weren't built randomly, but were the result of precise and long-term planning. Straight streets, the precise sewage system, unified buildings, all this indicates there was a clear vision and disciplined execution. In our world today, where cities grow very quickly, often chaotically, we can learn from the wisdom of the ancient planners in the Indus Valley. Good planning for infrastructure, especially water and sewage systems, is not a luxury, but a necessity for society's health. Lesson 2.
Environmental sustainability. The second lesson relates to our relationship with the environment. The Indus Valley Civilization flourished because it was in balance with its environment. They depended on the Indus River, but they also created systems to manage water wisely. But when the climate changed, whether due to a natural cycle or human actions, the civilization couldn't adapt quickly enough. This is an important lesson for us today. We live in an era witnessing rapid climate changes. The environment isn't just resources we exploit, but a complex system we're part of. When we disturb this balance, we may face dire consequences. Lesson 3. The value of community and cooperation. The absence of huge palaces and magnificent temples in the Indus Valley might mean this was a more equal society than others. Perhaps resources were distributed more fairly. This reminds us that a strong society isn't necessarily one with a strong ruler or an elite class living in luxury. Rather, a strong society is one that cares for all its members, where everyone feels belonging and responsibility. Cooperation, teamwork, the sense of shared responsibility, these values are what built those great cities. Lesson 4. The importance of preserving knowledge. One of the biggest tragedies in the Indus Valley story is the loss of their language. All their knowledge, their stories, their wisdom, all this was lost because we can't read their writing. This reminds us of the importance of preserving knowledge and transmitting it to future generations. In our digital age where information is abundant, we might take this for granted. But history tells us that knowledge can be easily lost. Writing, documentation, archiving are all ways to ensure that what we learn today won't be forgotten tomorrow. Lesson 5. The fragility of civilization. Perhaps the deepest lesson of all this is that civilization is more fragile than we imagine. The Indus Valley wasn't a weak or primitive civilization. It was one of the most advanced civilizations of its time. Yet, it disappeared. This isn't a call for despair, but a call for vigilance. We must be aware of dangers, prepared for challenges, flexible in dealing with change. Lesson 6. Trade and openness. The success of the Indus Valley in trade with distant civilizations reminds us of the importance of openness to the world. Isolation is not strength, but openness and exchange with others is what brings prosperity. Exchange of goods brings with it exchange of ideas, and ideas are what drive development. The more open a society is to external influences, the richer and more diverse it is. In our contemporary globalized world, this lesson is more important than ever.
Lesson 7. The value of questions themselves. And finally, perhaps the most important lesson of all, the value of questions themselves. The Indus Valley Civilization didn't give us easy answers, but gave us difficult questions. Who built it? How did they live? Why did they disappear? All these questions force us to think, search, investigate. Questions are what push human knowledge forward. The civilization that stops asking stops developing. A message to the present from the past. Ultimately, the Indus Valley Civilization whispers to us from afar. We were here. We were great. Then we disappeared. Learn from our story. Don't repeat our mistakes. Keep what you've built. Take care of your environment. Care for each other. Conclusion. Whispers from lost time. And so, At the conclusion of this long and peaceful journey through the ruins of a silent civilization, we realize that the Indus Valley wasn't just a name in history books, but was a world teeming with life that then disappeared like a dream at dawn. Between the paved streets, the mysterious seals, and the language that hasn't been decoded, this civilization continues to whisper to us from afar that everything, no matter how great it seems, may vanish, and that the real impact isn't measured by survival, but by what it leaves in us of wonder and questions. We spent an hour and a half together in the company of people who lived thousands of years ago. We walked in their streets, visited their houses, saw their workshops, contemplated their symbols, tried to understand their faith, traced their trade routes, and searched for the reasons of their disappearance. At every step of this journey, we faced more mysteries than answers. But this is exactly what makes this story amazing. It's not a complete story with a clear ending, but an open story that invites us to participate, to question, to search. And now, as night has drawn its curtain and our journey has reached its end, we leave behind the ancient walls of Mohenjo-Daro and bid farewell to the silent streets of Harappa. We return silently to the present, carrying with us a lesson from the past, that every civilization, no matter how great it becomes, is just a passing moment in humanity's long history. But every moment holds value. Every civilization leaves an impact, and every people contributes to building shared human consciousness. The Indus Valley Civilization, with all its mystery and secrets, taught us that silence sometimes speaks louder than words, and that mysteries may be more valuable than answers, because they keep the mind alert and the spirit curious. Thank you for accompanying me on this long and peaceful journey. I hope you found in this story what helps you relax and sleep peacefully, or perhaps what stimulates your thinking and invites you to contemplate. Don't forget to share with us in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more of this peaceful content that takes you on journeys through history and civilizations. Sleep well. And until we meet on a new journey, through time, through another civilization, through another story from humanity's great stories.